Sounds like fun.
So, Steven, we know that Joel is on the lam on a beach somewhere in the South Pacific. Where are you?
I'm in the outskirts of Chicago, suburbs of Chicago.
The suburbs of Chicago. That's what that accent is. That's a classic Chicago accent. I knew I recognized it from somewhere.
It's the original accent.
Yeah, you're gonna start a war in here. Careful. Okay. So, and Joel pulled this together. We keep messaging each other. When are we gonna do something? When are we gonna do a record another one? Whatever like this. So now we're doing it. People on here. Well, there's nobody here, but there's 4 eyeballs. Who are you people?
I don't even know what that means.
You're gonna start a war in here. Careful. Oh my gosh. Go back. Don't do what you're doing. Oh my goodness. Oh, we've got people. Hans Hollander. Look at it. This is awesome. Hans.
They
Hans. I think
leave.
Hans is in like Sweden.
They will leave if we don't start talking about something.
Or we just say hi to him. Hey Hans.
Hello.
That's awesome. Diego, oh my God. Yeah, he was like batch freaking 8 or 9. How you doing, mate? Good to see you too. That's awesome. He was in China Accelerator. God, it seems like years ago. One of the most awesome kids, by the way. I can say that because I'm old. And likes are coming in. Oh, this is super cool. So shut up, Joel. Steven, tell us about yourself, buddy.
Well, what is there to say?
You were a mentor at China Accelerator. You lived in Beijing. You've got a British accent, and you're living in the outskirts of Chicago. And you were flying drones and doing drone racing in Singapore. So there's some stuff there. There's some stuff there.
I feel like I could fill a novel when people ask me that question.
I know. Can I just start from 2 years ago? Because I don't know how much time you have.
I mean, the biggest project of my last 2 years is being a father, and nothing prepares you for that.
No startup owner's manual for fatherhood.
Exactly. So yeah, two-year-old son now, and starting to get my life back together.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna do that. Joel, you.
Hi. What? Oh. Well, I'm just here to just talk about anything innovation. I mean, just as why we started doing this is because Todd and I would be talking for like an hour on the phone, and then we're like, wow, that was like an epic conversation. I don't know how we got into it or how it happened. And then we said one day, how about we record stuff, more for our own memories? Like, didn't we talk about that at one point? And so, hence the genesis of this is, let's just kind of throw up a Zoom. Let's record it. Let's throw it up on the internet, see if anybody else wants to join. And let's just talk about epic stuff.
Yes. So I wonder if we should try to add value to other people's lives, or if we just actually talk amongst ourselves about things.
We don't know what value looks like to them.
No, potentially not. But we've got 3 people sitting here who have been around the world, have been involved in a ton of stuff. But we've also, we've been through all kinds of innovation, startup, entrepreneurship, and the ups and downs, managing relationships, or finding, relationships, or having kids and taking kids through the mess with us, and just things about crossing borders, and restarting your life over and over, reinventing your career over and over, dealing with trying to dispel the myth that you will work one place for 35 years and then they'll throw you a retirement party with a nice gift bag to send you to the ether. All these kind of things. And for me, still looking. Joel, kind of still looking. Steven, chilling. Kind of still looking.
I think we're kind of the people. I don't know about you, Steve, but I think I'll always be looking, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure there'll be a time where I'm going to go, yeah, this is good for the rest of my life. or
Yeah.
for the rest of my career. I mean, that actually sounds horrible to me. Like, don't sign me up for that. I don't want it.
Yeah, I think just as you were talking through the topics there, Todd, one of the things that came to mind is living abroad. One of the questions you get often asked is, when are you going home? It's like, when are you going to move back to the UK? Like, I don't see myself ever moving back. So I always phrased it as, I will move to the UK again if it's the right thing to do, the right opportunity, everything makes sense at the time to move to the UK. But I don't ever see myself going back to the
UK. Yeah, I didn't. Man, I just bought a house in Vernon. So I'm moving back to Vernon. Vernon is where I grew up, about 40,000 people. It was a great place to grow up when you were young. Wasn't a great place to be a young adult. I kind of left and told myself I'd never be going back, and now I'm going back for various reasons. So it's odd that I am going back, but it's a different life. I'm a different person, going back for different reasons. Joel, you were actually kind of back. You were from that area, no? Near Winnipeg?
If you consider 5 hours north, near, yes. So I'm from a very, very small town in I guess central Manitoba. It's a big place, and kind of grew up there in a farming community, and kind of knew that I didn't really want to be a farmer. So got my computer science degree and moved to Winnipeg. So I consider myself more of a Winnipegger than I do anything else. However, I've lived here. I've had a home here, family here for 25 plus years, but like yourselves, have had a lot of international experience. I haven't lived, like, I can't say that I've lived in China or I've lived in another country for an extended period of time with my family. But I think that the variety I've been able to have, all over the place, from Asia to South America to the UK. I've done a lot of work in the UK. I'd actually moved there, to be honest with you. I kind of liked it there. And all across Europe was really, really good. Gave me a different perspective that I don't think I ever had or ever would have had growing up in a farming community like I did. But I think what it's actually done is probably made me more curious, right? I don't know about you guys, but the more that I've traveled and seen things, the more in awe I am at how much I don't know.
UK.
I'm adding you guys to the title so that people who know you will see that we're in. Yeah, I don't know. I never wanted to. I think I actually always did want to come back because I knew it was a great place to be with the kids, and it's the lifestyle I grew up with. So, and I'm really more about lifestyle, to the detriment of my bank account. So I kind of wanted to come back because I like being in the Rocky Mountains. I'm a freshwater guy versus a saltwater guy. I like four seasons. I like snowboarding, and I like sitting on a lake, on a boat, doing some water skiing, whatever. And then when I bite it, I don't get a lot of salt water in my mouth or up my nose or burns. So it's just more my style. And it's really about the kids mostly, but it has been hard, and it's been really hard, and coming back. What's going on? Why am I getting this weird feedback?
Getting echoiness.
I don't get water in my mouth. Oh, cut my nose. I gotta stop that. There we go. That should help. It was playing on the feed. But I don't know. Innovation can be done anywhere. And I think that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur and being in innovation is that you can travel and you can do it from anywhere. Like, sitting on a mountain over top of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
You can do it there.
Can't beat that. But there's still a struggle, though. I mean, there is this promise that you should be able to innovate anywhere. But what I found is that I do need to spend more time in a higher customer density area, right? Where, you have really, really tight feedback loops that you can really only get in person. And so, like even though I live in Winnipeg, I still have to travel quite a bit to have a meaningful connection with customers. And if I think about Winnipeg, I mean, it's obviously the province itself is just over 1 million people, so there's not a lot of density for the customers that want what I provide. So if I really want that density, I still have to find that I create relationships in person by traveling, and then once I have those relationships, I'm able to explore those digitally as we're doing right now. But even when I worked with Telerik, I had a team in Boston and in Sofia, Bulgaria, and a small team in Egypt, and a team here in Winnipeg. I found that, I would go to Bulgaria and we'd have these great planning sessions, and it was just great. You come back and you go, have dinners together and you bond and you do all this great stuff. And then you come back to Winnipeg and it's good, but then you start to get this atrophy of mind melding, that the connections start to kind of go fuzzy. And what it takes is another trip over to re-energize that, to realign, to do all that kind of stuff. So even though I think it is possible to do business from anywhere, I think that there's still a lack of those feedback mechanisms that allow us to have a good quality of relationship with one another digitally. And also just with customers, I find that I have to be with them in a tighter feedback mechanism.
I definitely think I agree with that from the point of view of new business development. It's insanely hard to do business development without meeting people face to face. Finding new clients, even if it's word of mouth. You want to sit down with them and talk through their problem before you're able to really build that relationship that's going to be fundamental to working well together. I guess I've been lucky with one of my clients that's been an almost completely remote relationship over the last 4 years now. But really had to push for having regular weekly video sessions, and sometimes you feel like you don't have anything to talk about, but actually having that regular time in the diary, and every now and then somebody cracks a joke or something, has actually made that relationship workable. But it's definitely requires more investment than being able to see somebody face to face on a regular basis as well. But it's tough because it's expensive traveling.
Do you work for a company, or are you on your own now, Stephen?
Still working for myself. So I have clients, but yeah.
I loved the premise. You did something, and I met you through Shlomo. Mm-hmm. It's a real name, people. When I when I met him, that was Shlomo Frund. I met him in Dalian in 2007 because my only connection to China, when I went, I knew and had known one person by email. That was it. And she was actually teaching Chinese to Shlomo in 2007. And it's amazing how that one random connection in Dalian, this tier 2 city in China, comes back into my world many years later in Beijing, because he's working for you at Ikura Media. And I thought Ikura Media was very interesting because the premise of which I've always understood it was very simple. People can invest cash as an angel investment. You were investing code as an angel developer.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that was just basically taking two different points and mashing them together. One was recognizing that a lot of founders were finding it difficult to get off the ground into actually creating stuff that can be tested. Because even with a lot of software developers on the ground, it's very hard to find ones that will either work for equity for a startup that doesn't even have a product yet, or are just able to it's really tough to find that kind of talent to get yourself bootstrapped in the first place. And then on the other hand was I wanted to start investing in startup companies, but I didn't want to put any money in there because I wanted to keep my own money. So I was like, you know what, I could do like, I can spend my own money and then invest my time in these in getting ideas off the ground. And you know, 9 times out of 10, you'll spin the wheels and nothing will happen. But then that 1 out of 10 time, you get something that's worthwhile investing more and more time in, such as Split Force. You know,
that's interesting that you say that, because that's the story of my life too. Most of my ventures have been sweat contributions in some form or fashion versus cash. I mean, I have done cash investment too, but most of the most significant have been through sweat, or in some cases IP that I've already sweated on. Sweated, is that I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like, here, let's start with this because I've already built it and it has value, and so forth and so on, right? So I love that idea. And I've always thought about, you know, I wonder if there's a way of, you know, I know you're doing this on a one-on-one person, but I've always wondered if there's a way to kind of have an equity investment firm that's about sweat, that has kind of individual contributors that says, listen, I mean, I'll contribute. I might not be a developer, but I'm a really good UX person, you know, and I can really help you along the, you know, you can get a piece of me, but in exchange, I get equity as a result. So people can kind of make their day job and work, you know, those 20, 30 hours extra a week, because why not, to invest into startups that have the potential, at least, to create revenue for them. Because so many of the really, really talented people I know have mortgages and kids and spouses that might not want to go back to eating ramen noodles, you know, for a long period of time. And having an opportunity to say, listen, I can work weekends and evening to fill my entrepreneurial bucket, but in exchange, I'd like to get an equity piece for this long-term promise of liquidity, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, they have outside jobs that is providing the finance, but it's obviously not satisfying something else. So now they want to take a piece of something. But which, and I know there's an interesting, there has been for a few years now a discussion and a narrative that's talked about throughout Silicon Valley about, should we start actually just paying people?
Crazy.
Startups are always wanting to pay less, give you some sort of equity, with the narrative of, we want to know that you're invested personally in what you're doing. I want to know that you care about this. But there's been pushback on that lately, of people saying, I just want to get paid, and actually maybe we should just pay people. Because in certain places you can't afford to live if you don't get a certain amount, like San Francisco. But and then you mentioned good old Split Force, which Joel, just so you know, it was a company that went through China Accelerator in, I'm going to say that he was batch 4. I'm going to say the last one that we did in Dalian.
2012.
Was it 2012? If it was 2012, that would have been batch 3, or 2013, the graduating batch before we moved to Shanghai.
Yeah, because I moved to Singapore, but I felt like I'd been doing it for longer. Just maybe it felt longer at the time.
Maybe. It was he was because you were a mobile guy, Steven.
Yeah.
You had Vodafone background, and so you were a mobile guy. I remember you flying over from Beijing to Dalian to do some mentoring, and you built an app on the plane that you showed me when you got to China. It was I can't remember. It was like a swipe hot or not-ish type of thing over, like, on something of golf courses or something. But then anyway, you joined Split Force. Split Force was doing A/B testing for mobile. I think it was started off with Unity.
No, we started off with just basic iOS. The very first week that I started working with Zach, we were like, but before we started working, he wanted to do A/B testing to help improve websites for Chinese companies. And I said, have you looked at Chinese websites? They don't really care about how well websites work. They just tick the box that they have a website, and then, you know, they revisit it 5 years later. So I was like, yeah, maybe this direction. And really, I can't help you with that either. I hate web. So so I was like, but if you want to do mobile, you know, I do a lot of mobile apps, and I haven't seen a lot of stuff in this space. So if you want to do mobile, then I'll work with you. So then I basically cobbled together, there was software as a service, so backend as a service at the time called Pars, which then got bought by Facebook and then got closed down. But it made it very easy to spin up services that would send data down to your device. And Google Analytics, which would then pick up all the data and aggregate it for you. And I realized that basically A/B testing was a combination of these two services with a little bit of you know, sprinkle some magic on top, and you've got a service. And so basically within a week we had an A/B testing service for mobile spun up that would actually work, and then we continued to productize that over time. Started to add in the gaming piece with Unity through contacts with like Happy Latte and the other guys in Beijing. Yeah, ultimately built it out to a platform that was starting to take on real customers, solving real problems. We did some work with big, I can't remember now. It wasn't Walmart. I thought it was Walmart, but maybe not. We did some large company stuff, and then ultimately sold the company to Localytics. So it would form part of a larger piece of mobile analytics.
Yeah, Localytics based out of Boston, no?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. From what I remember, it was an equity deal for the most part, but it was a decent deal. Yeah. Right. It was a pretty good exit, actually.
Yeah. So the first, I think I chunked it into 9-month chunks, if that makes sense. Yeah, I did 9-month chunks. We did the first one. We got to the end of 9 months, and it made sense to do more. And then towards the end of the second 9 months, it was starting to grow, and they needed some more resources on the product development side. So I actually took a small paid role in addition to doing the development work to help guide the product development. And so it was already, you know, sort of helping to cushion the blow of moving to Singapore from Beijing. You know, my costs had increased by doing that, but Splitforce had matured to a point where it could sustain that. So overall, it worked out as a pretty good deal, and I think end to end was like 2.5 years.
Right. Yeah, it was a good ride. It was a good success story early on for China Accelerator as well.
But I think the concept is, as Joel was saying, is right, that the way that we invest in startups right now precludes a very large and talented demographic of people from being able to start a startup. You know, and I have people that I talk to from time to time that, you know, say, you know, I want to quit my job and become an entrepreneur, but I've got 5 kids. How do I do it? I'm like, well, you know, you either have to have like super big kahunas, or you just got to suck it up and keep working for the man. But that shouldn't be the answer. There should be. I think the big piece is always economics and making sure that incentives are aligned. I like the way that the deals that I worked for example, with Splitforce, aligned incentives very well. Because what I saw was if I'm investing my time, it's you know, it's exclusive. I can't put time into 2 things simultaneously. I can concurrently run you know, multiple products, but you know, if I'm sitting in front of a computer writing code for an hour, that is 1 hour for one product. It very rarely works for multiple ones. So it's important that I know that what I'm investing that time into is going to work well. So, you know, a lot of developers, you know, you tell me to do this, I'll charge you this, and then they don't necessarily get involved in the success of the product or services as much. Whereas when you seeing it as an investment, then you're taking much greater care of, well, we could do this much more easily if we did it this way, or why don't we test this out first, so that we can kill this idea. You're much more likely to do those kind of things than when you're being paid as a salary developer, or being paid for the time.
We're talking about a lot of really interesting things, and we're using the term investment. And I think Mark
Russell Filarowski
was mentioned online that he, only a very, very small percentage of people ever get rich from working for someone. But, one of the things I'm contemplating writing a new book right now about the inner game of being an entrepreneur. And I tell you, it's more about becoming rich. It's much more than that. Investment is a broader perspective. There's a compulsion that exists as being an entrepreneur that doesn't exist for non-entrepreneurs. And that compulsion isn't just about getting rich. Because guess what? Going to work for a startup, not good odds you're going to get rich. In fact, pretty shitty odds you're going to get rich, right? Mm-hmm. So what's the compulsion? What is the driving energy for an entrepreneur to say, you know what? I'm willing to exchange a large portion of my life for this. Mm-hmm. Is it becoming rich? I don't think it is. I think it might be the possibility of becoming rich. And as I've been talking to a lot of founders, what I've been finding is that it is the promise of potential, their own potential in terms of their earnings, and just to see what they can do, right? Can I build a company that's like this? Can I build a piece of software that does A/B testing? The challenges that they would never have seen before. It's these people who are attracted to solving these challenges that have this compulsion that says, you know what, seems like a good idea to me, but there's absolutely no freaking logical way that you can put down a spreadsheet and say, yep, that's the best path I should take, right? When you start investing into startups like that.
Me personally, so when I joined even SOSV and started doing China Accelerator, there was a salary, but there's a carry component with all the startups that we invested in. And I guess for me, there was three things. I liked the environment. Let's call it the work environment, the lifestyle environment of the job. It was fun. You didn't necessarily have to show up at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. You definitely did not necessarily go home at 5 or 6. You did not necessarily get weekends. You did not necessarily get a lot of things. It was all over the map, but it was fun. So I loved kind of the flexible environment. I loved that. I loved the work. So just plain and simple, loved the work. And then I loved the potential upside. I did. I mean, it was motivating for me in that regard. I had enough income to live, but then I had upside that really kind of tickled my fancy of potential, which of course, when I'm out, in China hunting for winners for the fund, I mean, I was thinking of myself of almost as much as I was thinking of the fund, which was kind of important.
I mean, for me, it's, I would say that money is a strong motivator. I've had good luck in my career in being able to jackpot a few times, and I definitely am searching for obviously the next jackpot, but there's also this state of flow that this holy shit moment gets you into, right? So for example, that's why I love speaking on a topic that I've never spoken before. It's because it causes, this future state going, oh my God, I need to figure this out, right? And you get into the state of flow, or it helps trigger the state of flow where you're all in for like 20 hours, right? And it feels good. There's a feeling that's associated with being all into something, right? And I found that has been, and I didn't know this until about recently, and maybe some additional therapy here and there, to understand what was I looking for And I would always be positioning myself in a way that caused stress, that relied upon me to overperform in order for me to rectify that stress. So even presenting or writing a book or doing a startup or doing, something that had this, holy shit, this is all on you, buddy, that caused me to just go all in. And it's actually that feeling that I found that I've become addicted to, and why I just think I'm ruined when it comes to just going and working for anyone else right now. Because I just like, what do you say? I can go and have a salary and you're going to just pay me to do my job? That sounds easy. I think I would actually be a slacker. You know what I mean? I think if someone just gave me a salary, I'd be like getting to work at 10 and leaving at 2 and going, fuck, I could do anything I want, and still get paid. That sense of pressure really kind of drives me.
I mean, I agree that money is a very important motivator, but also being able to do something, to be able to see the future and then make it happen is often reward in itself as well. Doesn't pay the bills, but it feels good. It's that reward center in the brain.
It's funny. I only found it at the top, right? So I have this unique perspective running China Accelerator for almost 5 years, and just seeing, dozens of companies, dozens of shit hit the fan. Shits hit the fan.
Many shits.
And watching them hire, watching them try to kind of suss out, pay versus equity and all these kinds of things. What I found was a big issue. Founders were unable to deliver, were unable to inspire in the same way that they were inspired to do what they were doing. They couldn't cross that chasm to inspire their team to buy into their vision in the same way they were bought into their own vision and passion to solve that problem. Maybe this is, the communication level of people in today's world, and that we just kind of suck at it, which is why I'm glad to be doing stuff like this, to actually talk to real people face to face. But I just, and then this is when I just started really honing in most of the work that I did. If I was ever other than operationally running the program, if I was actually mentoring for any reason, it was around communication. It was delivering the message. It was talking about your why and what you were doing. But I always felt that was a big kind of falling down part. People come in and say, be interested. There's a job. It's a cool product. I like that kind of thing or whatever. But when they were asked for equity, I'm like, can I just get paid? Is that okay? Can I just get paid? I've got, but China was a little bit different, and especially the Chinese culture and the kids working over in China, they had different incentives through their culture for a lot of reasons as well. So I will color it with that. There was a lot of Asian in that. There wasn't always necessarily the North American kind of way, but and as of today, talk about timeline on that return. I still sit waiting patiently for some kind of return on all those years of sweating it out with the China Accelerator. Although I will say there's some really, really good looking companies that are in the bucket right now. BitMEX, come on, BitMEX. That's the horse I'm all in on right now for sure. I'm
sorry for your loss.
Pardon?
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, they are. Well, do you know something I don't, Stephen?
No.
They do extremely well. They do extremely well. They're definitely in the unicorn atmosphere. But anyway, still not a thing. And for me, I've switched. I've kind of gotten out of the innovation game. I still enjoy working with entrepreneurs and doing a lot of mentoring. I still run some things here. I do a startup hot seat where I get people to try to come and do a demo day style pitch because what I quickly came to realize is, you know, I was in Shanghai, big startup scene. I went to San Francisco, obvious. Came up here to Kelowna, and people don't have opportunities to do pitches, to do demo style pitches, to do audience centric pitches. So I've still needed to work with a lot of people on that. But interesting, I want to go all the way back to what Joel mentioned about your book. You know, I have this term that I kind of coined, the entre philosophy. And to me, the philosophy of why you are doing a startup and the philosophy of how you choose to operate your startup, to me, is still the biggest thing. People are the biggest risk, screw up things the most, so to speak.
Well, and I think it plays a really important role when things get bad, because there's only one guarantee.
Right.
Shit's going to go bad.
Yeah.
Right? And so when it is getting bad and you lose your footing, what do you grab onto, right? When you've rolled down the hill a few times and you've hit your head on a rock, I'm talking metaphorically in all of these cases, by the way.
I've done it.
You know, how do you pick yourself up and go, yeah, I'm going to start climbing again, right? So I always talk about the innovator's journey as being this roller coaster, right? You got this idea, you're consumed with it. It's like, oh my God, you know, you're just filled with excitement and passion and all that kind of stuff. But that's not sustainable at all. You can't have that. When things go wrong, you can't get up the next morning and go, oh my God, I'm full of passion again. You're like, why the hell am I doing this, right? And that's what I'm talking about with regards to the inside game. And it's kind of like elite athletes. I think about CrossFitters, you know, professional CrossFitters, and I go, what motivates you to do what you're doing? Because holy crap, are you putting yourself through a whole lot of hell? And you can't tell me that every day is bliss. I would suggest that most days are horrible when it comes to, you know, the amount that they have to train and sacrifice for this passion of theirs, right? And so when it comes to being a founder, and by the way, I don't think it's just founders of a startup, because I'm starting to see this inside of organizations as well. So you have these internal startup teams. What keeps you going when shit goes wrong? You know, what's the mental game? And I think it's all about the mental game. You know, when you go into the trough of despair, how do you wake up in the morning and go, okay, I'm just gonna focus on this, right? You know, I miss meeting out with your friend Brent.
Brent Fikowski.
Yeah, and because I wanted to ask him, I'm like, so, you know, you ever have those days going, oh my God, I'm never going to hit the finals, and he, you know, I was very interested to see what his internal talk is, because I think my hypothesis is that the internal talk of an elite athlete is the same as the internal talk of a founder or an innovation lead, for when shit goes bad, and they just have to come back to their core behaviors. I just have to focus on this. I just need to do this, and if I do this, the outcomes will follow, right? Because it is definitely, when I see startups failed, when I failed, or my startups have failed, it's because I failed, and it's because I didn't have anything to hang on to, and I've given up, or I've been, you know, in a cognitive bias bubble that I couldn't seem to break out of. You know, those are the internal struggles that I see happening. It's, you know, when I look at the process, it's kind of like, and by the way, the idea I came from, I was reading a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And when I was reading it, because of what Tim Ferriss was talking about the book, was that he loved the book, and I was reading it through an eye or a lens of being an entrepreneur. I go, this is the same. I've lived through this, and this internal, you know, how do you get out of plateaus? How do you get in? You know, you could be training like like crazy, and actually your game will be degrading, right? So how do you get out of these plateaus? How do you pull yourself out from that? How do you integrate rest and, you know, the mental attitude with performance? And that goes a big way in terms of being quote unquote successful. And by the way, my idea of success is not living in big houses and driving big cars. It's setting a goal and achieving that goal, right? Through hard work, whatever that goal is.
Good job. Inside joke with Joel. Pat on the head. Except you do live in a big house and drive big cars.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I don't know. This is pretty big. Stephen, I give you a chance to jump in. I don't want to take all the time here. If you have anything to say, but your purpose, your why.
My why? Yeah, my why is, you know, I look at the way that the kind of careers are structured. You know, I started as a career person, and I looked at how people get rewarded in that environment, and I just thought that this isn't the best way for the world to be built. And so ultimately, you know, I grew within that environment. I learned a lot. I met a lot of really cool people, and you know, it was safe, it was secure, and it gave me the means to be able to take risks with my life when I decided that I no longer wanted to be a career person. And so for me, it's just, you know, recognizing that the world can be different from that, and then doing whatever I can to make that happen. You know, to realize, you know, a world that's different. So, you know, working with people as a freelancer versus taking on a job, you know, trying to figure out how to enable entrepreneurs that wouldn't traditionally be able to be entrepreneurial. You know, things like that are the things that drive me. You know, ultimately, yes, I want to. I want to have a big house and a small car, not a big car. but yeah, it's having more and more people able to innovate and contribute to the world that I think is just going to make life better for everyone.
I totally agree. And Steve, it's very interesting your story because it's very similar to the story of the people I've been interviewing, that they started off in a career. They started off, you know, in an organization, and then they slowly kind of started to unravel that they didn't really think that that was good for them and for other people. Now, do you think without that experience, if you would have just jumped right into a startup, you would have been where you are right now? Or do you think that that was a path that you needed to kind of go into you know, to really kind of open up your perspective?
I mean, it's a hard question to answer because when I first started in a career, there wasn't a whole lot of startup opportunities anyway. You know, UK kind of startups were a little bit behind where Silicon Valley was, for example. And you know, technically, Vodafone at the time was kind of, you know, a very much a growing startup. It was it just kind of broken out from being a UK operator to having like a global presence. So it was definitely on the larger side of startups, but it had a bit of a startup mentality to it, at least. And you know, I kind of joined just too late to be able to take advantage of that as well. There was people that kind of joined the year before me that had stock options that were fantastic, and then they did another round of stock options, and they never they were never above water. So you know, I just missed that wave by like a year, and so then I think that was one of the things that kind of opened my mind to the fact that you know, people can and do get considerable wealth from enterprises that are successful if they're in it at the right time. So I just went completely the other end and like went straight to the beginning of companies rather than trying to find the next Vodafone, as it were. But I think to answer your question, no, I don't think I'd be in the position that I am now, just simply because when I recognized the situation that I was in at Vodafone, I recognized that it had a lot to offer me, and I just made out to get as much as I could from that company. So that took me to Japan. I ended up spending a 2-year stint as an expat in Japan, which then led to my expat time in Beijing. And then ultimately, when I chose to leave Vodafone, I stayed in Beijing rather than repatriating to the UK. And got a decent kind of golden handshake out of that, which set me up to be able to do what I did afterwards. So, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that if I'd gone straight into a startup environment. Is my guess, at least.
Interesting. When you asked Stephen that question, I wanted to blurt out, I absolutely did. I needed the awakening. I needed to jump in, and I mean, I absolutely fell in and got my ass handed to me. But I absolutely needed all of that to wake up and realize I'd never heard of anything. It was thank God that I ran into Cyril, who created China Accelerator, was the first person that I ever met that introduced me to the whole world of startups. I don't think I could have spelt entrepreneurship correctly when he first kind of brought it up to me. I certainly had no idea what an accelerator was. Yeah, I was pretty lucky. I had my eyes really widened and opened for me. Yeah, I don't know. I was very, maybe still am, but extremely naive about a lot of things in the world. I had this super curious nature, but it just never extended out to that. I feel like when I run into people like you guys, that you had more of a mature handle on some of the cutting edge things that were happening around the world, and were better able to see the future in a way. But I don't know. I've kind of always felt like I've been always playing catch up.
I think there's kind of two aspects to innovation that I see. One is the technology side, which obviously is something which I'm much more exposed to because I follow technology on a daily basis. I'm trying to stay up to date with skills, and so I get exposed to more technology innovation. But at the same time, you really need that kind of soft skills and networking kind of personalities to make any kind of success. So I always find that it's not sufficient just to innovate in technology. You've got to understand the business, you've got to understand the people, you've got to have people that can introduce you to the people that are going to need that kind of technology. And that's kind of where I've always seen you fit in very well, Todd, is you're a people person, you bring people together, and I find that super important.
Yeah. And I think Joel would probably agree with that. It's funny because Joel's a mix of if you were that one side, but you also have excellent people skills, you're just less interested in humans and emotions. And I'm on one side, I'm on the other side. And then Joel is in between. For however that seems, because he's got this tech background, completely understands tech innovation as a commodity, and yet has great people skills and is very personable, and is a magician on stage or when he's speaking to capture attention, and he does a very good job of being just as funny on stage as when he's off, which is so fucking hard to do. It's just that's an amazing magical trick, because trying to be funny when you're talking to a room full of people is very dangerous, and often goes very poorly. But I don't know. I'll throw it out, Joel, if you have a question, because my itch now is mental health, so I totally want to always just talk about that right now. But
I'm with you there. I think that mental health needs to be at the forefront, and it has so much to do with what I was just discussing before. That inside game. There's phenomenal stats that show the rate of anxiety and depression in founders or people, and I think about why. Like, when you work in such uncertainty, right? Uncertainty creates fear, creates anxiety. And depression is kind of how you look at your life as how it leads up to it. the fear of being alone, the loneliness of being an entrepreneur is a real thing, you know, and I think that really does impact mental health. I know it has for me. I've gone into major bouts of depression and anxiety in the past before just because of my career. And I think to myself, God, I would, you know, maybe I should just take a job somewhere, you know, knowing that I'm going to have a regular paycheck or something like that. And I find that I have spiraled out of control as a result of that. Now, what happens when you spiral out of control, and how do you recover from that? Because it is a mental thing, you know. And obviously, I actually have decided to turn to physical fitness to help my mental game, and that has helped me a great deal. But it's also not everything. I mean, there's way more to it, right? And so I think, Todd, your discussion around and your focus on mental health is applicable to everyone.
Well, that's good. So other people know, a couple of people watching. So Stephen knows. A couple months ago, I had lunch with a guy named Steve Wandler. And Steve Wandler was one of the founders of a company called Fresh Grade. It's about a $25 million company that does an education platform and for teachers and parents and everybody to have visibility in the classroom and what's going on and stuff like this. And just more touch with what's going on in the classroom for their kids, which is great. So we're having lunch, and I was complaining about an emotional event. And I'll say complaining because I think that's really what it was, and that had happened, that had bothered me. And, you know, it had stuck with me for a couple weeks, like bad. I get bad anxiety when it comes to this kind of stuff. And usually I have no problem sleeping, lucky enough, but it was really bad in this case. And he says to me, have you ever been tested for ADHD? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, no, and he's like, why not?
Like, squirrel?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I said, well, I'm not hyperactive. And he says, okay, so you don't really know what ADHD is. And I said, well, I guess no, maybe not. My niece has it and she bounces off walls. I don't do that. And she said, well, that's a kid thing. Anyway, so that started a whole thing for me. And to cut to the chase, it seems I very, very much have ADHD. And so I've been going down this rabbit hole of learning everything about ADHD and what it is. And I was already getting interested in mental health. Stephen, you may know or remember Ray Ma, who was the managing partner at 500 Startups in Asia, right? So I had talked to her, I don't know, a while ago, maybe 6, 8, 10 months ago, introduced her. She was doing a new thing, and it was around the Transformative Technology Conference. And she was creating something called the Transformative Technology Academy, which was a no fee, no equity, 1-month virtual accelerator for mental health, wellness, and joy technology startups. And she had some very, very good, kind, extremely wealthy people that just out of their own pocket backed this whole thing. So I was a mentor, ended up, being the country manager and joining, asking Joel to come and join, and working with a lot of mental health focused startups through that program. And so I just became incredibly interested in mental health. So then I started talking about it, and I said, well, I've had a lot of struggles. My life hasn't been easy. I've been through a lot of things. My own drug addictions, my own failed startups, my own all kinds of things, right? Relationships, job bouncing around, all kinds of stuff. And what I found was that the more I started talking about it, the more I found everybody else had it. Like everybody. It was everywhere. And like case in point, yesterday I went to have a coffee with a young girl who does a lot of community theater. And I asked her a little bit, I brought us up to speed, and I said, oh, ADHD, mental health, kind of stuff like this. And, lo and behold, we spent an hour and a half talking just about mental health and ADHD and all kinds of stuff. We didn't even talk about the theater. We had to create a new meeting in a couple of weeks to actually talk about that. And then I had a call yesterday morning with another young entrepreneur. He had some questions about a business model and stuff like that. I brought up the anxiety, the ADHD, mental health. And then again, the entire hour was just that. And at the end of it, he said, you know what? This absolutely trumps anything that I was going to ask about my business, because that is far more impactful to my ability to do business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was on a prescription of a Mickey of Wisers to get to sleep every night. And he's still in his late 20s. But it was all he had. He's done 6 years of meditating. He does yoga. He has tried everything. And he still only gets about 2-3 hours of sleep a night. My ADHD coach, Dan Duncan, who's renowned in this area, he, we met with yesterday. He said he didn't get to sleep till probably 2:30. Sleep is just a massive issue. So yeah, I mean, I'm all in on mental health, and I want to talk about it. And I want to talk about it everywhere with everybody all the time, because I guess I'm lucky enough to be able to, without shame, or being ashamed of my past and the things that I've gone through. And I'm happy and blessed to be in a position where I've come almost full circle, and I'm a highly functioning, somewhat coping, mental health, recovering person. But I want to use that to now kind of draw everybody else out, and into this discussion, because it's really big. I think we know, even from talking about our investment conversation, that when you're making investments, there's a lot of things that a lot of investors look at and will question. But the 9 times out of 10, what wrecks a startup is the people. It's the humans. It's not the technology. It's not the macro environment. It's not all these other things. It's the humans, for whatever reason, losing interest, making bad decisions, getting their reality distorted about what they were actually doing, losing focus, losing sight. Yeah, it's all kinds of stuff. And I just think it's such a big thing. So I very much want to talk about it, because I want to help people, and I want to help people understand what's going on. Oh my gosh. Did you see who's here, Joel?
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Forte, Stephen Forte. Mr. Price, Mr. Forte?
I did.
Okay, so we should actually invite him to just jump in if he's got the time.
Well, Todd, I think you bring up a really interesting thing. Like, when I have been working with leaders, I do some leadership coaching, outside of just being a founder. And the first thing I ask is, how are you sleeping? And how are you managing stress? And it just opens up this it's like they were just holding it in, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm an imposter.
Right.
It just comes out. And we can talk about all these strategies and how they can implement these different planning methodologies or whatever, right? And I start digging right away, because I know that 9 times out of 10, and it's funny because, and I think that the 10th person who goes, oh no, I sleep fine, I don't have any stress, they're just lying. And they might be lying to me, or they're lying to themselves, because I find that a lot of times people just try to pretend themselves out of a problem, versus actually trying to deal with it. And for whatever cognitive bias reason that is, but it's so common, it's crazy. And I think that, we're still trying to figure out how to handle all this media and technology. I know for myself, I've been much more cognizant about distractions, notifications, and stuff like that. And even things like Facebook, that, if I were to track my happy days versus not happy days, there is a bit of a correlation to how much time I've spent on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that there's a bit of a correlation, and it's not just me who's coming across with these studies. There's people are starting to realize that if you kind of live your life through Facebook, versus kind of dealing with your own stuff, you might be less happy. So.
I always wonder about the correlation versus causation argument on that, because I find, like, when I'm more stressed or depressed or just procrastinating against getting started on something, I'm going to spend more time looking at Instagram or Facebook, or trying to be distracted,
That's a really good point.
to get myself into that flow where then I can get stuck into something. So if I was to track my happy days versus not so happy days, I would expect to see that correlation, but I wouldn't necessarily ascribe blame to the social platforms. And in fact, I find it somewhat cathartic sometimes to just, escape from reality, just go and like read a few things and, just get that out of my system and then hit the button and go.
Oh, you're probably right there. I do the same thing with like Netflix, right? So if I'm feeling like overwhelmed, I'm like, screw it, we're gonna binge. We're gonna binge something right now, because when you're watching some good, good movies, you're not thinking about reality a bit, right? So maybe it does give time for your brain to process some of that stuff.
And I also wonder whether, like, a lot of people would look at that and say, that's not productive time. You're procrastinating. I wonder if procrastination itself has been given a bad rap, and that causes people to take on more mental health kind of stress. Because I think it's important to reward your brain with a bit of time out. Some trashy TV can be just what you need sometimes.
Yeah, and I think you've nailed it. From a performance perspective, if you look like a high performing athlete, you can't train at level 10 every day, right? You're just going to burn out. You'll in fact impede your performance by magnitudes. The secret is rest, and rest doesn't necessarily mean sit on the couch. It means doing something other than that high level of training, right? And I think that's same for us mentally. I mean, the greatest thing that I think that we need to give ourselves some time, believe it or not, is boredom. Your brain does amazing things when it's bored. I find that just going for a walk where I'm not actually on my phone and actually giving myself an opportunity to have an internal dialogue without having someone else's dialogue in my mind is really helpful. I mean, speaking of Stephen, he's dragged me out not dragged. I mean, I went willingly to the Everest region with him a number of times. And you start hiking, and you still get these phantom vibrates in your pocket, right? You're like, "Ooh, I should be getting notified for something," and then after a week, you're like, "Oh, wait, what is that? What is that sound? Oh shit, that's me. That's in my mind. I'm actually having a conversation with myself, and I'm not having someone else's message in my brain all the time." Because that's I think the other aspect too, is that sometimes it's so easy to have someone else fill your brain with what they think you should think about, versus I wonder what would happen if I just got bored and what my brain would do. I don't think we give ourselves that time because it's so bloody easy to be distracted, right?
I think that's right. I think I've tried to be bored a few times, but I always find ways to distract myself from it.
Well, when my oldest son was graduating from high school, that week I actually said, I'm going to be present. And actually I got my admins to turn off my email at the server, because I was a sneaky son of a bitch, right? I'd be able to go on different ways to look at my email, but I'd find myself going onto the couch, pulling up my phone and hitting Outlook, like without even thinking about it, going, oh, there's no email, right? Like it was just so habitual. And that's the thing that bothered me, that I couldn't just sit down and be present, that my initial instinct was to put out my phone and hit a button so that I can feed it with something. And it made me sad that I couldn't be present, and I had this urge to fill my mind with something that was just garbage, right?
So one of the luxuries that a lot of people with ADHD have, for those who don't know, I have ADHD. I am always present, for good or for bad. So one of the reasons, now a lot of people with ADHD carry and have a depression, a depressive or anxiety part to it, or have compounds with that. I don't tend to have depression or anxiety, because I do absolutely I live in the now. And I really just don't worry about the future that much. I used to, and I would have trouble sleeping because of that. But I very much just live in the now. I get mad when my happiness in the now is taken away from me, and that's where I'll spike and go from 0 to 10. it's really funny. It's, you know, my poor wife, if she ever stumbles in and wants to start talking about, you know, how little money we have, or have like one of these conversations that's not fun, I get mad. I'm like, no, I want to have fun right now. Like, I don't want to talk about serious, you know, adult stuff. And it's, but yeah, the present, but see, the problem with ADHD, for those who don't know, and it would be a struggle for other people, is that you don't get the opportunity to do things that benefit your future as well. So if there's something, like if your teacher says you need to do this and it's due in 2 weeks, your mind won't give it attention until the last minute. So this is where you typically, so where like a normal person's brain will go, okay, it's due on this date in 2 weeks. I'm going to give that 8 units of resources to put it somewhere in my brain and make it a priority at this level. And the ADHD brain says, I'm going to give it 8 units and for the same reasons. And the normal brain gets 8 units and the ADHD brain sends 2. And so it just doesn't, because it's in an actual chemical, does not fire. It is not a pleasure sensory type thing. So they just don't, it just doesn't. You tell it to, and it says, okay. And then it goes in the back and it does a quarter of the job. And so then you just kind of forget, or you don't realize, or whatever.
So is there an opposite of ADHD?
Yeah, you.
I know, right? That's what I'm asking, is because I have a hard time being in the now because I'm so busy ruminating about the future or ruminating about the past that I've actually screwed up my now, right? So
that's a good point. It's interesting. I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know how to do that. I know that like there are like things like I mean, Ritalin and things are for focus, right? And this is so where the ADHDers they don't have a deficit of attention. They just have attention on 12 different things instead of the one they should be focusing on. Hence why, you know, cat videos on YouTube or something get so much play, because you just go down those rabbit holes. But I don't know, you know, because you know, the meds also help us properly remember things and are properly motivated, incentivized to get things done in the future. It helps our brain fire, and those chemical stimulants help us fire in the proper amounts to lodge things into the to-do list that we will remember and do. I don't know how you would do the reverse. I think it's maybe just getting super high.
well, it's funny because Todd, you have an amazing memory. You have such an amazing memory for people and their names and their context, and like it shows that you're present, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's literally the opposite. Is like when I get introduced to someone, I'm like, I'm already, you know, and for a while I thought I had ADHD because of that, because I'm thinking about the future or the past or something like that. And to the point where like I would forget that did I take my vitamin pills today? I have no idea. Can't remember it because I was never in the now, because I was always on autopilot. Like while I was, taking my vitamins, I was thinking about what I was going to do or something in the future or something in the past, but now is a fleeting moment for me. So, and I think that is a testament to my lack of memory and your ability to, like, your memory is phenomenal. If there was one way to describe you, is like your ability to remember names blows me away. Like you're just quoting stuff and exactly the conversations that you had with people. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even quote what I taught, what I had for breakfast this morning. Right.
But you know where that comes from? It's because it's people. And I am so devoutly interested in humans. I just love people. I love talking to people. Like like in those conversations I had like a couple of months ago, and you and I have both been struggling for a similar amount of time trying to figure out where we're going. And I would get down and I would, message you or call you and I'd be like, you know what? I'm having a bad day. I am not happy right now. And then your advice to me was call somebody and mentor or talk to them. You like human beings. You like human being interaction. Go do human being interaction, and that will make you feel better. And so I do, and it does. And I call somebody because I like to talk to human beings. I like them. You know what? Let's talk about shit you're going through. Let me see if I can help. I'm not that motivated or interested to help myself, but I love helping other people, right? I will drop everything to go run and help somebody in need or somebody who needs help. And then I never end up charging for it, to the detriment of my poor wife and my wallet and bank account, who always says I should. But yeah, you're right. It's the humans. It sticks. My parents and my family are consistently the same, blown away by my ability to remember everything from growing up, especially family vacations. I remember everything. And because you know why? I remember the feeling I had, which helps me recall everything around it. I remember how I felt when I got off the plane in Hawaii for the first time and that warm wind hit my face. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. Yeah, just other things. Being in a car, driving from Vancouver to LA in, 45-degree weather, Celsius. And just, yeah, I don't know, all kinds of things. I remember all these things. And my brother doesn't remember anything. Doesn't remember a single thing. His brain couldn't be more different than mine. But yeah, I don't know. It's, but I mean, there's pros and cons, right? There's massive pros and cons. It's, being present. And it's funny with me and Kate, who's now on, watching, we are very, very different, my wife, because she supports our family by worrying about, putting the past in the future and making sure that things are stabilized going forward, that when we get to that point in the future or in the past, that, that we're taken care of, because I would be the worst at that. If I was married to somebody like me, oh my God, our life would be a disaster. So we're extremely complementary, despite the fact that I'm always getting mad at her for bringing up stuff in the future, being anxious or worried about things in the future, because I hate worry. I hate worry. Worry is the worst. It serves no purpose. It doesn't help anything. I've yet to stumble across a good reasoning for why we have worry in our lives.
Saber-toothed tigers. Right? We're sitting in the cave. We're just kind of worried that there's like a saber-toothed tiger out there. I think there's a some mechanism in there that says, the anticipation of something creates worry or something like that, right? The what if. And I think that some people are more tuned into that emotion than others. Definitely there are a lot of more people who are risk averse. And by the way, they're not bad people. They're some of those people you need in your village, right? Because they are thinking about the saber-toothed tiger, or they're putting away some extra food when we have extra food, because what if, we don't have enough in a couple of weeks, right? So I think if you think about from a village perspective, having a scattering of the people who are worried is a good common thing. But I think that so many of us maybe are not maybe focusing on really the true impact of those things. I mean, or we can maybe spiral out of control and worry too. But I don't think worry is unhealthy. I think excessive worry is unhealthy.
I think it's like everything in life. It's all about balance. If you don't worry at all, then you're missing out on the things that you should be prioritizing to make your future better or whatever. But if you worry all the time, then that's terrible as well. There's always a happy medium somewhere in the middle on a lot of things. I always come back to balance. Like if somebody takes an extreme position on something, I'm like, I probably am going to take the opposite opinion, just to kind of bring the conversation back to the middle, because that's where I'm most comfortable, in the middle.
I know. I guess. I mean, yeah. I mean, there is a place for understanding the future. Managing risk and being aware and things like that. I find that worry is something a bit of an epidemic.
Mhm.
And this is where anxiety comes from. Like, I love the term that anxiety is worrying about the future and depression is worrying about the past. And if you kind of sit in the now, you're less likely to have anxiety or depression if you're okay with the now. But I don't know. Here's a little twist. So I was talking with somebody that I met at an ADHD seminar, and she, young mother of 3, blah, blah, blah. We're talking last night. I kind of have taken her on as a bit of a mentee, try to coach her through these kind of things. And we were talking about being open about mental health because, Joel, you and I were listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast yesterday. I don't know, Stephen, if you had a chance to listen to it. It's like over 2 hours long.
I didn't.
Gosh, I wish Tim's could just get his.
You can listen to it on double speed,
I do. I listened to it 1.5, but it's still, they're so long. But he was talking about in every culture around the world, because, Tim Ferriss is really all about mental health right now. And as he was saying in that podcast, he's now devoted all of his angel investing into research around psilocybin and is it psilocybin?
Magic mushrooms.
Yeah. And MDMA, right? As to where he wants research done. He is incredibly bearish on these as potential solutions for mental health in general. And he was talking about how nobody talks about it enough. And in most cultures all around the world, to every culture, the way men are brought up and the way we are designed, manufactured to be and deal with things is to not talk about our emotions. If we have problems, to not show weakness. Right? That we're not supposed to show weakness. And we therefore don't talk about mental health and we don't talk about the issues that we're having. And which is really too bad. And so the person that I was talking to, Annie, she said, yeah, for sure. It's definitely more difficult for men to talk about this kind of stuff. And I said, yes, but I'll give you back that when we do, it is much easier after that because we're given so much more credit for our issues than women are. Because when women talk about it, it's easier for women to talk about, which is great. But then they don't get as much credit as men do because they can be quite easily dismissed as being emotional or being overly dramatic or the most awful thing in the world of like, oh, it's that time of the month or something, right? And so they don't actually get the same credibility for what they're going through as men do. And I was glad that I was talking to a woman about it because she said, oh my God, that's brilliant. Like, that's actually so true. And she even struggles with her husband not giving her full credibility, full attention for the things that she's going through. And that's kind of an unfortunate dichotomy between the two genders. Oh my God, Joel, guess who just joined?
I don't know.
Brent Fikowski.
No kidding.
So, Stephen, just so you know, Brent Fikowski is somebody that is a friend of mine here in Kelowna. He placed second in basically the world's fittest person competition, the World CrossFit Games. He finished second a year ago, and then this year tied for third, ended up fourth on a technical, something like this. But and we've had Brent come and talk at one of our at our entrepreneur retreat to talk about the strength of character and the focus and the things that it takes to be that kind of a person. And, a really great person who to talk about mental health and mental fortitude would be somebody like Brent, of what it takes. Because I really honestly believe that at some point when you get to an athletic and competitive level to a degree like what Brent has gotten to, you then, it's mental over physical at some point. Like it really must be. And I can't even say, because I've never been in that situation to know firsthand. But I would imagine that it's got to be a lot more of the mental fortitude. And, maybe we'd have to invite him to join the conversation one day to get that. But
yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that comes back down to the inner game of tennis I was telling you about.
right.
It's the mental game is everything. And when you think about high performing entrepreneurs, people in with careers, I mean, isn't it the same? Isn't it, being able to kind of push through those hard times, kind of push through the pain, just knowing that you have to do it. Like for example, have you ever had to fire someone? Right.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so being able to be the person on the firing end of that, if you don't have any emotion associated with that, you're a robot, and that's kind of scary. But so how do you recover from that? How do you prepare for it? How do you recover from that? How do you do it properly? Right. How do you turn it into something that becomes just a behavior that you can maybe even practice and get good at? But it's being able to push yourself through those levels is just a mental game. I think for all of us, there's a sense of comfort, and it's very difficult. Like we always used to talk, Todd, about, we should always look for being uncomfortable, because if we're uncomfortable, we're learning, we're growing, we're getting stronger.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, most of us, skirt the edge of comfort and we go, "Oh, look at me," and then we're good, right? I even know for myself at the gym, could I push myself a little harder? Yeah, but it would be more uncomfortable. I might hurt a bit more tomorrow. So what's the mental game in order to, to keep on pushing yourself further? And I find that that's the same mental game that I struggle with being an entrepreneur, or pushing through the uncertainty and focusing on my day-to-day behavior versus the outcome that I'm trying to get to. That's going to come, that my lag metric is going to come if I behave properly today. Right, Steve, from an engineering perspective, that you're going to get higher quality software by doing things better in the here and now. It's not about how you test, it's how you build and think about things, and as you're going forward. And I think it's the same as true for anything. But focusing on your lead metrics, your day-to-day behaviors and how you go about them will actually dictate how you're going to have, what your outcomes are going to be. But I think we get caught up in the outcomes. I want to lose 20 pounds, but I'm not willing to eat, less calories than I'm burning, or going to the gym every single day. Right.
Yeah, I wanted to say something, and then I kind of lost it because I was, ADHD, sticky note gone. I wish I remember what it was. You mentioned a little bit, kind of tapped into the hard thing about hard things, which very interesting. So one of the more memorable parts of that was firing people, and how difficult it was to fire people. And I think it was probably one of the main premises of why Ben Horowitz wrote that book. Have you read that book, Stephen?
I haven't.
Highly recommend it. It's absolutely fantastic. I remember now. So you remember that Joe Rogan podcast? I brought it up, and I think you had seen it, where there was the guy coming in and talking about when you go to the gym, just do 70%. 70% of max every time. Why? Because it's repeatable. And it's mentally easier to get up and go to the gym every day when you only have to do 70% of max, because consistency is more effective than the quantity of output that day. So being able to consistently go to the gym and mentally get over it makes it much easier. And the delta, like the aggregate amount of work or calories burned, let's say, if that's how you're measuring it, is going to be far greater. And so, because he was saying you shouldn't be sore after you work out. And Joe Rogan was like, how in the hell is that good if you're not? I love being sore the next day. He said, yes, but it's not as sustainable. He said, don't be sore, go in, do 7% like this. I wonder how much of that we could apply to other areas of life, or even to doing startup. because I think staying consistent, whether it's changing the way you eat, call it a diet, working towards your goals, whatever they are, going to the gym, which is it's a classic example, right? The whole going to the gym on the, there's business model sides of gym memberships, which is used in a lot of different scenarios. But then there's kind of the mental, people like to work out at home versus go to a gym, or just getting up and going and having the motivation to go. That's everybody will say half the battle is just getting there. Once I'm there, I'm good.
It's funny, I was listening to a podcast with Seth Godin, again, another Tim Ferriss podcast with Seth Godin. He said something that I found very interesting. He's like, well, how do you produce so many, blog posts? And Seth is like, 'cause it's my job and I'm a professional, right? I may not want to do it, but it's my job and I'm a professional. That's why I do it, right? And sometimes it's as easy as that, right? There's a whole lot of things that we don't want to do, that maybe we don't need the motivation to do because we're just going to have to do them. I mean, I don't like to clean the toilet, but it's my job, and I'm a father and a husband, and I'm going to do it, right? I don't have to go, where's my inspiration? And I think that so much of that, maybe we need to kind of come back to a lot of these things, is maybe we don't have to look for inspiration. That, I think back to, my pioneering grandparents and so forth, they did a lot of work they didn't want to do because they had to do it. Not because they felt inspired. Maybe we have too many options. Maybe we have too much choice, right? Where we're like, maybe I don't have to do this. Maybe I could just take a pill. Maybe I saw something on Oprah and blah, 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 blah. Maybe we just have to go say, I have to go to the gym because it's something I have to do to be human, whether or not I like it or not, right? And I think so much of that is true for being a founder and entrepreneur. Sometimes I find that when I get spiraling out of control, it's because I'm in my head too much. And if I just come back to basic principles, do these things, right? Whether or not I like it or not, I'm probably going to get the results I want.
I mean, I see it interestingly that what you said earlier about sort of having, doing the right process is sometimes more important than the immediate outcomes. And I kind of, I've been through a number of different phases in terms of my physical health. And I think what I've come to the conclusion to is that it's easier for me to get and stay fit by pretending that I'm not doing it to get fit. If I have to go to the gym or run on a treadmill, it sends me crazy. I'm like, I know I'm doing it for a good reason, but it's just not fun. Whereas I found that if I do an activity where there's kind of, it's a balance between a bit of technical skill and a bit of strategy and a lot of physical activity to get there. So I play badminton, and I find that for me, that is very easy to motivate myself to do because I enjoy the game itself. I get fit as a result of playing it. Which is the primary reason that I invest money and time into doing it. But yeah. I don't measure it by my immediate fitness outcomes. I measure it by how often I can play and for how long. So before my back injury, I was playing almost 5 times a week, 2 to 3 hours at a time. And I was like, I was hella fit. And I was like, it feels good. I can eat what I want, drink what I want, which is the other part of the goal, is like, if I could be fitter, then I don't have to worry about dieting. This is how I game it for myself, is like, I want to eat good shit. I don't want to worry about how much I can and cannot eat or drink or whatever. So, if I can build my routine around this is how often I'm going to play badminton, then I get the outcome that I want.
I'm so glad you said badminton and not golf. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people. It's like, oh, I golf 5 times a week, to keep fit. I'm like, no person in the history of the world has gotten fit playing golf. Seriously.
Look how fit Trump is and how much golf he plays.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, fit playing golf.
You know, we have an interesting person who's joined, and Augustin, who Joel and I both know is on as well. Welcome, Augustin. But Colin Hodge is on here. That's also a very surprising person to have joined. Colin is an amazing young entrepreneur who would probably have a lot to say about mental health as well, because he's been through his fair share of ups and downs and been around the world. He went to MOX, actually, one of the SOSV accelerators in Taipei. Pardon? You mentioned there?
Yeah, for a little bit.
Well, of course, it's mobile. That's where you belong, really.
Because that one at the time.
But Colin was the founder of a little known but super infamous, actually a very well known and super infamous app called Bang with Friends. Yeah. So and that's a very, very interesting story, because he was able to stay under the radar. And nobody could find who was the creator and founder of Bang with Friends for a long time, for months and months and months. His ability to be a successful entrepreneur may only be overshadowed by his ability to, stay hidden from the limelight. But a phenomenal young man. I've always enjoyed every interaction with him. Super bright. And it was interesting because TechCrunch eventually did kind of find him, and he was willing to give them the story they wanted if they'd kind of kept his name out of it before. Eventually it all did kind of come out and he had to change the name. But his stories of sitting, and having to have security literally had to remove him from Apple headquarters because he was so annoyed that he had been taken off iTunes. And out of the App Store, I guess, and just some of the battles he had to fight, and sort of some of the mental hurdles that he had to go through, must have been extraordinary. But yeah, maybe we'll have to get him on at some point to chat as well. But anyway, sorry to have diverted from everything you were saying. I know we just ended with golf. But physical fitness is huge. I play hockey. I do it twice a week, fairly religiously. I do Mondays and Fridays. And it's because hockey is a phenomenal, exhausting workout. It is bar none, I think, one of the most difficult things you can do for fitness, where you are running in sand for an hour and 15 minutes, or like running on the beach. Yet you have to have full control of your upper body, and you have to have great hand-eye coordination. You need to have stamina, but you also need quickness. You need endurance, but you also need the size to withstand a lot of the impact. And you need the strength to be able to dig in the corners and battle in front of the net. And it just takes to me, it kind of takes the full gamut. CrossFitters would be, great for hockey, in my opinion. I'm Canadian, so yeah, maybe I'm a little biased towards hockey, but it's so good. I'm so much more zen after hockey than any other time. I know when I come home, the kids are screaming away. I come in, I'm like, okay, tell me, let's all work it out. Everything is cool, and I just, and I'm a perfect conductor of the orchestra after I've done some exercise, the orchestra of my brain as well. But exercise is key, especially for ADHD, by the way.
I think especially for everybody. I don't know if there's anybody's like, no, exercise isn't for you. Well, I'm sure there is, right? Medically, I'm sure there's a ton of medical conditions in which case exercise is probably not good for you. But
yeah.
But
shout out to my buddy Craig Bond, who just joined as well. Works out in Ottawa. I love the exercise. It's super helpful, and I choose hockey because I'm good at it.
Well, I mean, the great thing about playing sports is that when you're playing sports, time changes, right? Like, it's not like you're thinking about the clock or, when I find when I go to the gym and I'm just doing strength training, for example, it's like it's a long hour. But if you're playing an hour's worth of hockey, or if you're playing an hour's worth, I used to play a lot of volleyball. I used to play a little bit of badminton as well. Just other sports, you get so consumed in it, and all of a sudden, 3 hours goes by, and you've had the time of your life. Your mind has been laser like focused on the moment, which is rare for me. And it's actually amazing that I don't play more sports. One of the reasons that I don't is that I used to travel so much that I could just never commit to anybody to do anything, and it was just impossible to say, yeah, I'm going to join a team. So haven't done that.
I think team games are tough for people that travel. I was lucky with badminton that everywhere that I've lived, I've been able to find people that play. Like to the extent that my very first stint overseas, so I went to Japan in 2003. And I just started playing badminton again on a more serious note. And I was like, I want to keep this going while I'm in Japan. So I found some random guy on the internet that was Japanese but spoke good English, and he had a little international badminton club. And so I got off the plane on the Monday, and Thursday evening I left the office early and met this random guy at a train station and took a train out to the outskirts of Tokyo and played badminton with these guys, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made in my life.
So I sense a new app, Tinder for badminton players.
Could be. Generally speaking, I found meetup.com has actually been very good for that kind of thing, although not so much in the US, but it's good in the US for some things, but doesn't seem to be good for sports. But
they're I've seen a lot of the sports apps of the get together. We had one at China Accelerator in Dalian. Actually one that was just really trying to organize. I know when I worked at Parasoma down in San Francisco, there was a guy there working on a one that was for soccer players. You could book a field, you could get a ref, you could book a goalie, you could do all these other things and get people to come. It was I agree. It is tough to get people. That's why I like the drop-in hockey, and actually drop-in hockey is available almost everywhere as well.
Nice.
And that's all I do because it's much easier.
So if we were to take this and put it into a top tip for whether you're entrepreneurial, career guy, whatever, if you're able to exercise, find something that works for you, bake it into your routine. Don't worry about the outcomes. Just make sure that you're enjoying the time.
Yeah.
That it's physically impactful enough that you're going to get benefit whether you like it or not. That would be my top tip.
Yeah. And you can really kind of let go of and not be connected to technology.
Exactly.
I unfortunately love when I go to the gym, I like to use my Spotify playlist, but my Spotify playlist is on my phone. And therefore, while I'm listening to Spotify, I'm still getting dinged and this and that. And that's why I still have a very old school 1 gig iPod Shuffle that's like a thumb drive. And I still like to try to get songs from other places that don't cost money and then put them on my shuffle and just have that. And it just play from there. Because I just don't like the pings and stuff like that. Because Joel, you had mentioned earlier about getting away from technology.
Yeah, I find the same thing. I find that the best workouts that I've had are really early in the morning. No one's awake. I'm not getting any pings because it feels like it's an avalanche. So I'll get a ping, and I normally don't have any email notifications. So I'll just get a text ping or a messenger ping, and I read it, and then I'm like, well, while I'm here, I might as well check my email. And then I'll see something that pisses me off. And then my head is not my head is ruminating about something, right? And then I'm pissed off or I'm anxious or whatever about, and I've lost the benefit of being at the gym. And so what I've been doing a bit more of is putting, making sure that all of my song plays are downloaded, and then I'll just put it on airplane mode.
Yeah. It's true. You should. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I've been telling that to a lot of people around social media who are somewhat struggling, especially with teenagers that are dealing with anxiety. I think more people need to realize what social media platforms actually are. They're just marketing. They're the new magazine. They're the new billboard. It's all marketing. It's all business. Call the people you love and talk to them. Otherwise, social media is for business. And, I think once more people realize that, the better. I think people scrolling through Instagram are just slowly making themselves sadder and sadder and sadder. I mean, how many times, I'd like to, ask 1,000 people, how many times have you gone through? I'd like to measure your happiness level before you get on Instagram. Spend 20 minutes to half an hour on Instagram, and then I want to measure your happiness level afterwards. Are you really motivated? Is it really fitspo? Like, are you fucking inspired to go get more fit because you've seen some of these people? I like the educational components. I like some of the people that are on there that are actually giving you good nutritional or workout routine advice, because I like learning. That makes me motivated. But
there's such a signal to noise ratio with all that stuff, though.
Yeah.
That's like, so many people are just trying to sell you stuff at the end of it. Right?
Yeah, you got to realize that.
Yeah, like I was fascinated with some of the people doing keto, but at the end of the day, like, they're just selling you stuff, right? Like, back to what you just said, social media is for marketing. And so they might be giving you advice, but when you start to dig, you're like, maybe that's not the best advice.
Yeah.
This is maybe not for me. And it's so hard to weed through that. And I think that's true now with news. People are starting to question reality in general, because the stuff that they're seeing is just fabricated to sell you or to shift your opinion in certain ways, right?
It's attention.
Yeah,
it's attention. That's what they want. It's attention. And then once you have attention, you can sell attention. Plus you can sell the data that comes with the attention.
As we broadcast live on Facebook.
Yeah, well, you got to go where the people are. Okay, it's been 2 hours. We got to wrap this up. Places to go, people to see. I got to go meet with my ADHD coach, who we're actually going to take his business after him building 5 years of content around helping and coaching with ADHD. We're now going to try to create a platform and take it from one to one to many as much as possible. So again, just my big focus on mental health. If you guys ever know somebody who is struggling with any kind of mental health, I'm always a person who loves to jump on and talk and try to help give perspective from my experience or what have you.
Yeah, and as always, I just really enjoyed the conversation. Might even have a few blog post ideas that are percolating in my mind as a result. So you never know what's going to come out of that.
Yeah, and don't be surprised if you start seeing me. I want to just keep getting people on, and I want to have some really good, quick 20-30 minute conversations about a lot of stuff around. I mean, because mental health and entrepreneurship really kind of tend to go hand in hand, because entrepreneurship is such a struggle. You're contravening so many aspects of what we kind of are brought up to believe life is about. So it's a very difficult thing, not to mention just life in general. So I'm going to be doing a lot of this kind of stuff. And I look forward to it. But thank you guys. I appreciate the conversation as well.
Yeah. And it's good to meet you, Steve. Hopefully we can have more conversations in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah, you guys could talk about ALM or application lifecycle management. Some other time.
Application lifestyle management. I like.
Yeah, I know, and I keep accidentally saying that, and then one of these days it's going to have to be something. A whole new, your journals are ALM.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, signing off. Got to go. You guys have a great rest of your day. Everybody watching. Thanks for coming. Hopefully they enjoyed it. Learned something.
Thanks, everyone. It's all good.
All right. We're out. Peace.